Congratulations! 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 Congratulations!
Yo, what is up guys, this is Tyrannic Swine here, and welcome to my review of Cuphead, a run-and-gun indie game that was developed by Studio MDHR. Now the story follows two brothers called Cuphead and Mugman, who end up going to a casino owned by the Dice King so they can earn some quick money, but they end up getting conned and have to do the devil's dirty work by getting the soul contracts of his clients. So Cuphead and Mugman head out so they can get these contracts and somehow get out of this mess. Now what I really like about the story of Cuphead is that it's simple and easy to follow. You have a beginning and an ending cutscene, that is if you manage to reach the ending of the game, and then you pretty much play as Cuphead and Mugman throughout the whole game as you defeat each different boss throughout the four different levels. And what I really love about Cuphead is that it brings back a nostalgic feel a lot of games seem to have lost. It brings back the difficult gaming style that the 1980s and 1990s games really often have. This is something that Shovel Knight has also brought back. It has this the multiple levels you go through where you defeat different types of bosses while also having a difficult challenge to defeat them. This is something that Cuphead has done incredibly well, and it's something a lot of games these days could learn from. And this is only an indie game. Sure, the development time was very long, as this was shown back at E3 in 2014, but I feel like after finishing this game, it was definitely worth it. And considering this game took me about 27 to 29 hours, that is definitely going to keep you occupied for a very long time. Now Cuphead has some very interesting animation styles, basing itself off of the 1930s Disney-esque motion pictures much like Steamboat Mickey, and also having some hints of Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry in the mix as well, based off of what the characters looked like and some of the bosses. And I thought this was very interesting. A lot of games these days don't go for the cartoonish look. They more or less have their settings in sci-fi, dystopian futures. There is some games that try to go for the more comic style look, but Cuphead decides to go back for a more nostalgic classic look with the cartoonish way. But the thing is, even though this game may look like it's all sunshine and rainbows, it really isn't. Considering how difficult the game is, and how the characters and bosses you face have a sort of dark, twisted nature to them, it's a very interesting world that Cuphead is setting, and it's definitely interesting. You want to see and find out what each of these characters are like, even though you're going to be fighting them all the time, and that's pretty much what you're going to be doing. But in the world of Inkwell Isle, there is some random characters you'll spot along the way who pretty much just give you text speech. There's no voices or anything, which is also very interesting for the time, since pretty much television shows during the 1930s were all text-based. And I like how Cuphead went for this style, which probably does save a lot of time with the whole voice acting and everything, so you don't need to find people, but it's a very old-fashioned way that's actually very nice to see. And yeah, I really like the style of everything. The world is very colorful, there's huge tons of things there. Each of the bosses themselves look amazing. Each of them, yeah, like I said, based off of early Disney pictures and even early cartoon shows. So Cuphead has really nailed the animation style that is done for itself. And considering this game has taken a long while to develop, I think the wait for seeing a game as amazing looking as this was actually incredibly amazing to see. Cuphead is a little bit different when it comes to the mechanics of a run and gunner. Usually these type of games don't have a lot to offer with these sort of things, but Cuphead actually offers quite a bit. You start off the game with a little bit of a tutorial to help you with the mechanics of the game and to get used to what's coming. And yeah, you have your usual pea shooter type weapon, which can be useful, depending, but you also have various upgrades and abilities to use throughout the game to help you a little bit more easier in the bosses, and each of these upgrades and abilities will help you for different sorts of bosses. It's obviously best to mix and match them on different levels, as each weapon you have aren't going to work on the same boss. You have to think, and you have to really think about what you want to use when it comes to each of the bosses. And what I like about this game is that there is a little shop in the game where you can buy your weapons and upgrades by collecting coins throughout the whole level. And this means there's no microtransactions in the whole game, which is a great plus since you don't see many games these days without microtransactions. It's become a rarity, and it's something that Cuphead has shown that you don't need a game with microtransactions. And yes, that was really great. I also like how there's also these little pink objects throughout the game, scattered throughout the boss fights and certain levels, where if you parry it, you will able to fill up a portion of your super meter. The super meter is basically your ultimate weapon sort of thing. Like if you fill it up, you'll be able to fire off a special projectile which does a huge amount of damage to the boss. And if you fill it up, you can unlock like a huge ultimate move that's incredibly damaging to the enemy. And it's incredibly necessary to make sure you keep this meter filled up, otherwise you're going to get minced by the bosses. And yeah, so the way the gameplay works effectively very well. It's simple, easy to follow, it's actually very flexible in some cases, and it offers quite a lot of variation and like thought into what you need to use against the bosses. Now, speaking of the bosses, they are fucking difficult to defeat, because these are some of the best bosses I've ever seen in a video game for a long time. The amount of skill it takes to defeat them and concentration is immense. People might say Dark Souls has hard bosses. True, I'm not going to deny that, because I've tried that and failed miserably. This is annoying to do as well, but these bosses, there is a lot of thought that has to go into them. There is multiple cycles of attacks that the bosses throw at you, and each stage you get through, you have to rack your brain up about how to get past that and get just so you can defeat the boss. There is so much planning to do for each boss you go through. It is fail. It's like basically fight and die, rinse and repeat so many times till you eventually defeat that boss. But this is one of those games where it's like you rage, but you want to keep on going. It's like you don't want to give up no matter what. And that's what I really love about these bosses. There's such a varying degree of difficulty between each new boss you go up against. It's like, even if you go to, obviously the first two bosses you go up against are easy as hell, but the more you go through the game, the bosses will just get more and more diverse and random, and it's amazing. And you think the bosses you'll see in the first three sections can be difficult? The Dice King and Satan are complete and utter bastards. I hated those boss fights. The Dice King, he was a tough one. And he's a random one too. There is a lot of thought put into the Dice King boss battle. He probably is one of the most unique boss fights I've seen in a long time, where you have to roll a dice so you make sure that you either land on an extra life or another boss. You have to fight various bosses in the Dice King's boss fight, and then when you get to him, you might not even have any lives left, and then you rinse and repeat, and it's kind of annoying. So yeah, the boss fights are immensely amazing, but fucking annoying at the same time. And that's why I fucking love this game, because of what it offers you with the types of bosses it has. And not only that, there's also some smaller missions, which are they are like run and gun style levels, where you basically get from one end of the level to the next, collecting at least 3 coins in each of them, and making sure you don't die, and getting across obstacles and enemies. These are actually fun, and offer a nice variation. And there's also some boss fights where you are in some sort of airplane. These sections are also nice too, and offers quite a lot of variation. So the game isn't just one style of level, there's at least 3 different types. So there is some diversity with the variation of the levels of the bosses themselves, which is also very nice to see. This game also does have co-op, which is very nice to have, so you can actually suffer with a friend while playing this game. And I don't know if the game is easier or harder with a friend, because the thing is, if you have a friend with you, you pretty much have to keep an eye on them, because if they die, you are able to revive them. But the more they die, or the more the both of you die, the more you have to watch out for like reviving them. So I think playing Cuphead solo is actually easier. I think. I mean, playing with a friend is fun and all, because you obviously get to rage together, and it's fun mocking each other while doing it. But the fact that you have to keep an eye on each other when you die can pose a bit of a problem if the bosses are trying to attack you and then you're trying to get to your friend. It's mixed, but I really think this game is incredibly fun to play cooperatively. I also really like how throughout the whole levels, like outside of the boss fights, you can there's little shortcuts in Inkwell Isle, so you can get to another level quicker. And it could be little secrets, little areas where you find hidden coins and everything. These are very nice to see and have. I also like how there's also these temples around too. There's a few temple missions where you have to parry against a bunch of ghosts, so that you can unlock a sort of a charm. I think it's the charms, which are basically the ultimate move if you fill up your super meter fully. And these are incredibly helpful. These little missions themselves are also fun too. I like how open the world is. There's so much to see, despite there not being a lot. All there is boss fights and small missions to do, but this is an incredibly big world. Hell, you could make a whole TV show based off of Cuphead, the amount of diversity of characters there is. I mean, there's even little random characters you'll see throughout the whole level, just having little random conversations with them. And also there's even a section of the game, or one of the areas, where you actually have this little sort of fountain which tells you how many times you have died. A little nice touch just to see how many times you screwed up on the bosses. And, well, it does help you keep track of how many times you died, just to rub in the salt a lot more. Cuphead also has some really great music to go with it. Its 1930s style jazz and themes are amazing to hear, especially the Dice King's theme. He's probably got the best piece of music in the whole game. It's incredibly catchy, and when you basically encounter the Dice King, it's always nice to hear that jazz going off, and it's always great to listen to. The Cuphead soundtrack is just... It's Cuphead offers stuff you never really see a lot in other games. I mean, you probably would hear this sort of music probably in Bioshock, since it's sort of set close enough to the near enough that time. But Cuphead really brings back a lot of old things that we haven't seen a lot in games, and especially the soundtrack. The soundtrack is great. Each different boss fight has a different soundtrack. Some can be catchy, some are a bit mixed in my terms. It's not all of them are memorable, but I think the Dice Kings was fantastic, and I would love to listen to that often. I think I might actually put it in this video. But yeah, it's great to listen to. The soundtrack for Cuphead just brings the world to life even more. Now, there isn't really much at all to when it comes to bad things about the game. Cuphead is pretty damn spot on of perfection for a game, but there is a few iffy nitpicks here and there. The loading does take some time when you're getting into the game. Luckily, the loading isn't bad at all when you get killed by the boss and then replay. It's literally instantly, and that's great. So that's kind of my only nitpick really for the game, is the fact that it's loading, the time to get into the game just takes a bit. That's it. And I really can't see anything else. It has amazing mechanics, great boss fights, a simplistic story to follow along to, a very colorful world, some great music. Cuphead pretty much fills the bar on everything, and that's really great to see for a game like this in this time of it. And there's barely any games these days that are at the quality that this game has. And this is an indie game. A lot of AAA games seem to not know what to do when it comes to making a great game anymore, yet an indie game like Cuphead really shows you what to do and what to do right. So overall, I'm going to give Cuphead So, that is my review of Cuphead. One of the best, if not the best game from last year, and it is a game I've been wanting to see for such a long time that has brought back a nice ounce of nostalgia that has been lost throughout many games that I've seen during my time. and it's probably happened for a lot of gamers too. Cuphead is a brilliant, fantastic game that we have waited a long time for, and the wait was very worthwhile. This is a game that people should play a lot more often. True, the casual gamer may not like it because of the difficulty that it has and offers, but it's so worth it when you defeat a boss, and when you get to the end, it just feels glorious to beat Satan. So, hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Leave a like down below, subscribe, comment on what you think about the game, and also comment what other games you think I should review. And so, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next random video.
All U.S. forces be advised. We have a confirmed nuclear threat in the city. Nest teams are on site and attempting to disarm. I repeat.